So I want to welcome you all to the virtual Leadership Louisville Center. One of the things that we decided when we had all this crazy shift, our usual MO is to gather a bunch of people in a big room. And so we decided we were going to continue to gather a bunch of people, but just shift and not do the big room. So we quickly leaned into virtual space, and one of the things we found is that it actually has made it a lot easier for us to gather people and to get you good information. So this is one of those opportunities where we're making some lemonade from the lemons, and we're continuing to do our thought leadership series. Everything we do is all about helping people to be better and to do better, to make investments in themselves that help them be better, which is all about like learning and showing up for stuff like this so that you extend your knowledge and your information, and then be better. The question that we'll leave you with is, how do you walk out the door today and do something that is that advances the greater good? And our topic today is definitely going to help us do that. But before we jump in, I want to also just give you a little bit of information about some of the things that are coming up at Leadership Louisville that you might want to come back and hang out with us again for. The first two things on there are from our Leadership Green Room. Leadership Green Room are small bite opportunities to sharpen the saw, to invest in yourself so that you can show up as the very best version of yourself. Super important right now. And this first one is coaching others for high performance. Man, coaching is a huge, huge skill set right now. I mean, just not even like right now today, but as we shift our leadership models and we go less from like that command and control style to a style where we're empowering everyone and really trying to raise our effectiveness and our efficiency that way. This one is fantastic, and I can personally tell you that our facilitator, Jeb Bates, is magic. So we have that one coming up, and then we've got Lead Like a Boss, another great opportunity. And then if you want an even smaller bite, our micro learnings are another way that we are navigating this new virtual world. And this is a 1-hour drop-in where you are going to get some good information that helps you stretch and grow. This next one coming up is 5 strategies for resilience and growth. Anybody need a little help on resilience right now? So mark your calendar to show up for that one. We love it when you hang out with us. It helps grow our impact, and we really appreciate the gift of your time. So speaking of the gift of your time, I'm going to keep us moving. The last thing I want to share with you is our Leadership Summit. Leadership Summit is coming up in May. It is going to be a full day jam-packed. We're already working on some pretty exciting speakers, and we'd love to have you hang out with us at our Best of Leadership Summit. Some of the fine folks that we appreciate being with us are the wonderful, amazing people at Baird. And I want to just say how much we appreciate their support of the Leadership Louisville Center as their transition from Hilliard Lyons to Baird. You know, Hilliard certainly had a long, long history of being good civic leaders and good stewards and trustees. And I am so pleased with how the transition has gone and how Baird has been showing up in this Louisville community to carry on that tradition. One of the fun facts that I saw lately about Baird is that they are on Fortune's list of the best places to work. So not, just a little local list. They're on Fortune's list of the 100 best places to work. And the thing that I know about how you land on one of those lists is that you are a company that builds trust. Not just with your employees, but with all of the people that you come in contact with. And trust is such a significant asset in community trusteeship. That is one of the things that makes them a fantastic partner for us on this thought leadership series that helps us connect and be good civic leaders. So as an exemplar of one of those good civic leaders, who has already established such a wonderful legacy in our community as a leader who shows up and is willing to serve. I would like to introduce Jim Allen.
If you're looking for a different type of financial...
Thank you, Cynthia. And I think we have a quick video here we're going to show.
Financial advice you need
we
now.
Can tee that up.
It's rolling.
Discover the Bear Difference.
It's rolling.
Visit beardifference.com.
All right, Jim.
Very good. Well, thank you. And gosh, Cynthia, what a great introduction. We could actually use you for an ad spot. And I think one of the things that you hit on is just so true. And that is the cultural compatibility between Hilliard and Baird, not only from a business standpoint, but also from the standpoint of how we view and support the communities that have served us. And so that is a shared perspective that Baird and Hilliard have. And so it's great to be able to have an organization like Baird behind me and behind us and the care that they have for community service and supporting the communities that have been so good to us. You acknowledge the Fortune 100 best places to work, and I'm to be even a little more specific, Baird is frequently in the top 20 on that list and has been as high as number 4. So it is a great organization, and what you described and being in that top 100 and in the top 20 is a reflection of a great corporate culture. And so very, very proud to be part of the organization and proud of what we do, not only from a business standpoint, but also in how we serve our clients, but also what we do in the communities that have been so loyal to us. Today's program should be a really interesting one. And as someone who's been involved in the community as much as I have and have been involved in fundraising efforts, fundraising in a pandemic definitely has added an additional element of complexity, has made it much more challenging for an assortment of reasons. And we'll get into those, I'm sure, as part of the panel discussion today. But clearly economic duress, as well as sort of shifting donor priorities, duress among donors in terms of their capacity to give. So there are a whole series of things that have made fundraising during a pandemic more challenging and very challenging, and things that I have absolutely experienced myself as part of the exercise. So we've got a great panel today, and let me make some introductions, and then we'll get going here. So Trace Chesser. Trace Chesser is president and CEO of USA Cares, a nonprofit organization headquartered in Louisville that exists to help bear the burdens of service by providing post 9/11 military families with financial, employment, and advocacy support. Trace began his career with the United States Army, where he served in a variety of combat arms occupations and in Iraq with the 101st Air Force or Airborne Division. After his military service, he has dedicated his career to working with transitioning active military veterans and their spouses, and is proud to be leading USA Cares today. So we look forward to hearing from Trace. Next, we've got DeVone Holt, an old friend. DeVone Holt is the Vice President of External Relations for Goodwill Industries of Kentucky, a nonprofit dedicated to helping people achieve and maintain employment to gain a better quality of life. Since 2019, DeVone has led the marketing, communications, public relations, fundraising, advertising, and government affairs functions for one of the highest performing Goodwill enterprises in the organization's international network. Quite a job description, and I'm sure it keeps DeVone extremely busy. He is a multi-talented leader who combines more than 25 years of experience in a broad spectrum of industries that include work and economic development, education, healthcare, entertainment, and nonprofits. Last, and certainly not least, is David Lopez. David is relatively new to Louisville, coming in 2018. He is the Chief Development Officer for Metro United Way, a nonprofit focused on lifting our community by mobilizing people and maximizing our community's resources to advance opportunity and equity for all. David hails from San Diego, California, and has a background in science and engineering. In 2008, he felt called to move into the nonprofit sector, which eventually led him to join Teach for America as a bilingual educator in Houston, and he co-founded a nonprofit called USA Delante. His fundraising experience and had their roots in his work to raise $2.5 million in seed funding to launch Teach for America San Diego. He moved to Louisville in 2018, as I referenced, to take on his current role with Metro United Way, and we're very, very fortunate to have him. So please welcome our panelists, and Cynthia, welcome back to kick off what should be an outstanding conversation. So thank you very much.
All right. So we're going to do a little past, present, and future this morning. For past, I'm going to start asking our panelists to think a little bit about that pre-pandemic era, like not way, way back, but let's go into that, 2018, 2019-ish realm so that we can set up where you were, what you were trying to work on. And I'm going to start with you, Trace, because I think we first met you, in like May-ish 2019. You were first on the scene there. You had just started with USA Cares, and we had the opportunity to work with you because you had an Ignite team, and I think also maybe an Encore team through our community acceleration programs. So Trace, why don't you start us out and talk about kind of, you had just jumped in, were new, and how was your 2019 year?
Well, good morning, everyone. And Cynthia, thank you so much for inviting USA Cares to participate in this discussion. Great honor to be here. You're correct. Yeah, May 2019, I was asked to step into my current role. We were going through some changes here. And like anyone, we do a lot of observation and try to figure out what are the opportunities that are there that we can capitalize on. And so I was doing a lot of assessments, and I was notified probably a month afterwards that we were going to be getting a Ignite team. And that was super exciting. And for any of you that do not know anything about the Ignite or Encore team, you need to look it up. You need to find out about it. A tremendous resource. We worked with them. I mean, it was 7 professionals that came in, and they provided me with the resources that I didn't have. Going in and trying to determine what direction we needed to go, they were there for me, and they helped me a lot with that. January 2020, we got the Encore team, and it was the same thing. Tremendous group, tremendous asset. I can't speak highly enough about it. The thing that we learned from that whole process was that USA Cares, our mission to assist post 9/11 veterans, military members, and their families, emergency financial assistance, and then give them skills training to help them build a foundation for long-term stability. That's really important. But, we knew that there were some things that were missing, and it was the outreach and the awareness. There were just not enough people that knew who USA Cares was and what we do. So we started on that, and then we quickly determined with the Ignite team we needed to rebrand. So we went through a whole rebranding process, and they were tremendous in that. And so that started rolling out. The Encore team helped me with, USA Cares is not just Louisville, Kentucky. We get over 200 requests per week from military members, veterans that are in crisis. So they're coming from all over the country, sometimes around the world, if they went to live with a family member overseas or something. So we knew we had to do some things different. So we needed to get more of a national outreach. And with the limited staff we have, the way to do that was chapters. And so the Encore team helped me build that plan out and actually get that going so that we could actually do some outreach. So just to kind of answer the question, where were we headed? We had tremendous momentum and things were looking really great right before March of 2020.
Okay, so I'm going to jump to you, Devon, because you also were, this is a newish role for you. So when you took this role, what were your goals? Where were you all heading?
Yeah, much like Trace, Cynthia, I started at Goodwill in May of 2019, and the organization at the time had built out a plan to really kind of strengthen the awareness of what it actually does in the community. Believe it or not, although Goodwill is about a 100-year-old organization, there had not been at the organization a culture of philanthropy. And we had just sort of started that role. The organization for many, many, many years had relied almost exclusively in many cases on resources generated from our retail stores to fund our actual mission. And so there wasn't this push to do fundraising until about 4 years ago. And so we are relatively new to this space, believe it or not. And that process was underway. And for us, a lot of what that included prior to my arrival in 2019, and then just a little bit beyond that, was about friend raising. You know, we wanted to make sure that people were aware of what we did. You know, we had the good fortune of having a really strong brand, high recognition among people who knew the name Goodwill, but so many people were not aware that our mission was not to run retail stores. Our mission is actually to help people overcome the challenges that they have in order to build sustainable careers for themselves. And so we work with the hardest job seekers in all of the state. We're talking about people with physical and mental disabilities. We're talking about people with addiction histories, little to no education, little to no workforce experience, criminal backgrounds. Our job is to help them find success in life through what we call the power of work. And so our retail stores help us do that. But we started to shift gears, Cynthia, and began asking partners from around the state and others who had it to support this type of work to donate to Goodwill to continue advancing the work that we were doing around that mission. And as you can imagine, when the pandemic hit, it shifted a lot of our strategies around how do we engage people, how do we continue to raise awareness for who we are and what we do, and help people recognize that this is a viable, very necessary fundraising effort on behalf of Goodwill that's still worthy of their time, energy, and effort.
Okay, so David, as the seasoned veteran of the group, who's been in your role since all of 2018, not only is it, you know, a role that you were just coming into, you actually also relocated. So talk to us about your move here and what you were thinking. I'm coming to a new city, I'm gonna raise money. What was your focus? What were your goals?
Yes, Cynthia. So I was born and raised in San Diego. So saludos, buenos dias. As a bilingual person, I had to figure out a way to get Spanish in there, right? And my wife, though, however, is from Kentucky. And we met through Teach for America. And she'd always let me know that when we started a family, she was going to want to be closer to her parents. So in January of 18, we found out we were expecting our first child, a baby boy named Isaiah David. And I knew what that meant. I knew that we'd have to start looking into getting closer to her parents. And we looked at a lot of different places. And here's a big shout out to Louisville. I'd say the folks of Louisville were the only people that really went out of their way to make us feel welcome in the community. So we reached out to folks in Nashville and other places, people within our network, but folks in Louisville just, you know, they took hour-long phone calls and introduced us to organizations, introduced us to people. Everyone was just so excited to really get us to decide on Louisville, which we did. We said, you know what, we don't know exactly where we're going to live. We don't know exactly where we're going to work, but we're going to go in on Louisville because of the people in Louisville. And as I was going through my exploration of moving here, I started to hear a lot about who was making the big difference in the community. And lots of organizations and people came up. But one name that came up over and over again was Metro United Way and our CEO, Teresa Reno Weber. And so what had started as a list of about 10 different places and people that I was looking into, eventually at the very top of the list was Metro United Way and Teresa Reno Weber as an organization that I wanted to work for and a person that I wanted to work with. And so went into the role as Chief Development Officer, Metro United Way had just come through a very successful 100th anniversary campaign where we were able to complete a total fundraising effort of nearly $36 million. That resulted in us being able to add that to the previous 100 years of fundraising to complete $1 billion in total dollars raised in support of our community. And so it was huge. It was a real opportunity for us to reconnect with many community members, to remind them of the importance and the role that we play here in Louisville and in the region that we represent. We're actually across 7 counties that includes Kentucky and Southern Indiana. And we were looking at making very specific strategic shifts that would take us from our foundational workplace campaign type fundraising into more grant making type fundraising, individual type fundraising, even earned income type fundraising opportunities. And it's a great effect. We had 2 years under Teresa's leadership, under the leadership of an incredible board that is very strategic and vision minded, to defy our fundraising trajectory that had been declining over several years. And it was going back up in the right direction. And we were very excited about how do we take this to the next level. We had formed the first development committee of the board and had engaged an Encore Louisville group to help us with that development committee to really take some of the initial strategic shifts and just build them out further for the next several years. And then COVID hit, right? And I remember one of my coworkers has told me that when we made the announcement we were going to start working from home and he heard we're shutting down for 2 weeks, he took it very literally and left everything back in the office. And I think a lot of us did. We thought, okay, we're going to take a 2-week break. We're going to figure out some of the things we need to adjust in response to COVID, and then we'll be right back at it. And here we are, almost a year after.
Yeah, right. Still waiting for 2 weeks. So one of the interesting things is February 2020, right? We're hearing everybody talk about strategy. We're rolling, man. We're excited about it. Ooh, we got the pieces are coming together. Even a couple of, like momentum. And then March happens. So let's talk about March happening and what was your biggest challenge and maybe your biggest shift in all of that strategy and good planning. Let's start with DeVone. How about Goodwill?
Yeah, well, for us, again, we were in this process of building greater awareness for our actual mission, who we are and what we do, not our retail stores, but the work that we do to put people to work. So just this past year, even in the midst of a pandemic, Cynthia, I will tell you, we managed to put 2,000 people into jobs around the state with many of our employer partners who we work with to connect job seekers with employment opportunities. And we're really proud of that because these are not, again, CEO types. We're talking about the hardest to serve job seekers in our market. And so, we're building momentum there and everything comes to a screeching halt. And for us, then we have to shift gears and start thinking about one, how to keep the ship afloat. What do we do to kind of make sure that we maintain momentum? We had to close our retail stores for 2 months, which was a significant hit to our organization at the time. And quite frankly, was a little frightening because we didn't know what that was going to mean to the bottom line. We didn't know what that was going to mean to how we managed our mission work moving forward. And so one of the things that we did that was very strategic was instead of stepping back from marketing and advertising at the time, we took a step or two forward and used the platforms that we had already established, the advertising commitments that we already had, but we shifted the gears and we changed the messaging, but we were really intentional about using those platforms along with social media and every interview opportunity we had to continue to tell our message, because we believe that even though we weren't out knocking on doors asking for money, part of what we needed to do in order to be successful in raising money was continuing to let people know who we are, what we do, and why the things that we do are so especially important to this community, and more specifically, why they are especially important to this community right now. And so the pandemic, believe it or not, for us, was an eye-opener for many people about how and why the work we do is so critical. And, you know, you take advantage of the opportunities when they present themselves. And COVID for us presented an opportunity for us to show the community that the work that we do is extremely necessary. And so we got a chance to help people recognize, one, why our stores are so very important. Many people were cleaning out their garages, their basements, and everything else, and needed a place to take those. But then when the pandemic hit, and many people realized that the paychecks that they had relied on were starting to dry up, they were looking for ways to stretch a dollar. And so they would come to Goodwill to shop. And then part of what other people started to recognize was the actual mission work that we do to help people connect to employment opportunities was extremely valuable at a time when people were losing their jobs. And so all of a sudden, Goodwill became this centerpiece during this pandemic that allowed people to recognize the value in who we are and what we do.
Okay. So David, I'm going to jump to you next, and let's talk about, you know, that March 2020 timeframe and what was the biggest challenge and the biggest shift.
So a couple of things that they actually dovetail very much so with what Devon was saying, right? So historically, Metro United Way has a very strong presence in workplace fundraising. It represents still about 60% of our total revenue. And so that depends largely on in-person presentations. We go, we show up at your employer, we put on a presentation, we tell you about the work we do and why it's so important that you contribute. And so we knew for a fact that if we had to go to virtual, that was going to be a big disruption. Thankfully, we have an incredible team. Our fundraisers, our marketing team, our data and analytics folks were able to come together very, very quickly to make that shift into virtual. And thankfully, some of what Devon is describing was happening, right? Folks were seeing the way that needs were surging in the community. These are our partners, our donors. We're seeing the way that those needs were surging. The fact that we were seeing, you know, folks being threatened with being evicted from their home. We were seeing the number of disconnected youth in Louisville. That's youth that don't have a connection to education or work, was already at like 17 or 19,000 pre-COVID, and that has almost doubled in the period since COVID began. So they were seeing these needs surge, and they were wondering, how are we going to address these issues? And many, many folks in the community, we were very proud to see how they turned to organizations like Goodwill, like Metro United Way, and said, we need your help. And so therefore we had partners that said, look, we know that everything is different, but you better bet we're going to run our Metro United Way campaign. I'm talking, you know, UPS, GEA, LG&E, Baird, many of our top partners said, we will figure this out with you. And again, thankfully, we were able to leverage the incredible talent on our team to make those virtual shifts. So I think what we're focused on now, similar as Devon mentioned, is to really use the ways that we responded in the COVID moment to drive home our value proposition to the community. How Metro United Way plays this very unique role of bringing different organizations, even different sectors together sometime to tackle the challenges that are too big for any one organization or one sector to tackle on their own. And what a better example of a challenge that's that big and that complex than COVID. Certainly many, many questions looking into the future, but you know, having received this recent Mackenzie Scott gift, I think is a really you know, a vote of confidence for organizations, again, like Goodwill and Metro United Way, that have been rising to the occasion, that have been prioritizing equity to really close the disparities that impact our community, and that gives us a lot of hope for where we go from here into the future.
So I'm going to come back to that Mackenzie Scott gift because that bears a little bit of a deeper dive there. But I want to ask Trace, in March, you were actually planning a fundraiser, first time fundraiser. All those of us that are on, anytime that we launch a new event, everybody's feeling your pain because you all had hundreds of people lined up, going to be very exciting. And then March hit right at the time when you were getting ready to launch this event. So tell us about that.
Well, yes, you know, we had already kind of, like I said, we had a lot of momentum going into it. We had a lot of new contacts. We were just continuing the outreach. We had planned a breakfast event and we had 400 participants registered to attend. It was the very beginning of March. I was actually at Fort Knox presenting, of course, we do a lot of workshop training out there. And I was there and I was getting some calls from some other friends, and they were telling me saying, hey, this pandemic, COVID is really starting to move quick. And so I started calling around, checking, and I'm like, please, God, no, don't let this, don't let this happen. We're just a few days out from this event. But I made the decision to postpone the event. It was a tough decision to make, but we knew it was the right thing because we had to protect our supporters, our donors, our service members, our staff. So I knew it was the thing to do. So then all that hit, like DeVone was talking about, you know, you just go through and you start thinking about what else is it that I can do? And, you know, I guess the military background, I see my friend on here, Jim Iacocca, he can tell you about missions. And if you have a mission, it doesn't really matter what's going on around you, you need to complete it. And you may not have all the resources, you may not have the tools, but you need to do it. And for our service members, I felt the same way. And so I gathered our staff and we talked about it. And I said, you know what, we're going to do a breakfast, but we're going to do it virtually. And everyone stared at me like I was crazy. And so I see some of you laughing. You may have heard from some of the staff here. Yeah, everybody was like, oh, he's lost his mind. But I said, no, I said, I'm not going to just sit back and wait. We got to do something. And then suddenly everybody rallied around it. And we did several small breakfast events virtually. We figured out the technology. We figured out how to do it. And then, you know, we got a lot of people talking and we got a lot of people energized behind it. And we made more new contacts and it just kept going. Well, normally in the summer, we do a run. And so we have a 5K run walk event. I said, you know what? We're going to do that virtually. And so again, everybody's staring at me like he's lost his mind again, but we did it. And we had over 400 participants in that. But what really caught my attention was they came from 38 different states. They were registered from 38 different states to participate in our virtual run. And so I started to realize, okay, we've got some momentum going again. We're actually reaching out, we're contacting new people, we're getting new people energized and involved behind our mission. You know, I talked about Ignite helping me with the whole mission statement and everything. Probably the key moment for me was when we were sitting there talking about it. I never even thought about it, but suddenly it hit me. The most important thing about USA Cares mission, we reduced the factors that can contribute to veteran suicide. You know, and that is what, you know, I mean, I've had some friends that, you know, I've dealt with this personally. So I realized that, you know, before COVID, it was 22 veterans a day is a rough estimate. You hear that a lot. 22 veterans a day commit suicide. I've received new information that said during COVID, it's a 20% increase. So now it's 26 a day. That's what drives me to do the crazy things that my staff looks at me and says, oh, here he goes again. So, you know, we have to do something. And then we started getting referrals from other organizations saying, call USA Cares. They'll help you. Call USA Cares. You know, I ran a report recently for last year, and it was over 3,000 referrals of veterans to call USA Cares. And so I knew, okay, we don't have a choice. We have a mission. We need to complete the mission. We need to take care of our service members, our veterans, and their families. And it became very personal. So we got behind it. We started doing it. We had a virtual golf event that some of the business leaders in the community helped me put on. Tremendous event. I mean, those guys, it was unbelievable. It almost tripled what it raised the year before. And then we decided to do a virtual gala. Well, by that time, the staff was already used to me and they were like, yeah, he's lost his mind. So I walk in and they said, let us guess, you're going to do a virtual gala now. Virtual gala. We did it. But I think the key thing is we kept gaining momentum. We started getting new contact. We get more and more people involved and engaged. And we kept beating that message about we helped reduce the factors that can potentially lead to veteran suicide. Even more important than sometimes our mission statement. And just kept pushing that message. Our virtual gala I asked my communications manager about it, and she said at one point we had over 600 participants. And that event, I'll tell you, the net at the end, figuring out the expenses and everything, it netted, a virtual gala netted the same as our live gala in 2019. And a lot of it was just new context, better, clearer mission. And so I think it answers the question, but yeah, we we had that big fundraiser going. We knew we had to keep going.
Okay, so Trace, I'm going to quick follow up, and then I want to go backwards and talk about the McKinsey Scott
Yeah.
stuff. What's your one tip? You've been successful with virtual. What's your one piece of wisdom that you think you could share? Why are you successful with virtual? What's your secret?
Surround yourself with a lot of very smart people that are more talented than you. That's been the first thing. But don't fear technology. Use it. I mean, it's there. You know, when other people weren't doing it yet, we were trying to do it. I know a few people that did it, and we made a lot of mistakes. But people understood this was new territory, and we just kept pushing that story. And so I think that's the tip is don't be afraid. Don't sit around and wait for something to happen. Make something happen.
Yeah, that's good advice, Trace. Okay, so speaking of making stuff happen, I know sometimes when we get a lovely gift, it's like we just want to say, oh, we're just so lucky and so blessed, and which is, there's some truth to that, but also, luck happens when hard work and perseverance kind of come together and a good plan actually lands. So David, I'm going to start with you. Tell us a little bit about the gift that you all got from McKinsey Scott, and what do you think, what positioned you all to be the recipient of that money?
So Cynthia, yeah, I got a little ahead of myself there. Obviously, I'm so excited about it. So thank you for circling back on it. I think for me, the McKinsey Scott gift for Metro United Way starts with the strategic shifts that I described earlier when I talked about Teresa coming in as a new CEO, partnering with the board to say, what is the new strategic direction of Metro United Way? How do we go deeper on our equity commitment? How do we go more focused in terms of solutions and investments that are looking at the largest disparities in terms of education, in terms of financial strength in our community, and how do we really direct the work of Metro United Way even further in that direction? In the notification that we got from McKinsey Scott, the equity focused work was one of the items that was really highlighted as what put us on their radar. And just to add a little bit of flavor as to how we found out, Teresa got this notification from the person that was doing the outreach on behalf of McKinsey Scott, and the message was so vague and so much like one of those messages that you get that's a scam that she actually flagged it for our IT department and said, hey, someone's trying to phish me here. Please, make sure no one else falls for this. And that ended up delaying the process quite a bit. And so I think other recipients had found out somewhere around Thanksgiving. We didn't actually find out until quite a bit later. I think eventually they were persistent enough on their end to actually get us to respond. But thankfully, we did. And one thing that also speaks to in terms of the process, for a long time, nonprofit organizations have had to do a ton of work to try and secure funding, whether it's in the application or it's in the reporting, in seeking out the opportunities. I think there's something really important there in terms of what McKinsey did in her approach was, how do we make this actually as low lift as possible for the nonprofits? And how do we give them as much freedom to spend those dollars in the ways that they believe they should be spent? Because we believe in the work that they do. We did our research, we did our due diligence. We as the funder have done the work and recognize this organization is worthy of our investment. So from here on out, you all should decide how to use this. And I think that is signaling a new direction for philanthropy, whether you want to call it democratizing philanthropy or disrupting philanthropy. And I think Metro United Way is really excited to be part of that direction and bring alongside other partners and funders in that process.
So Devon, was that similar to your all's experience?
It was. David hit a lot of that on the head. You know, I think Mackenzie Scott and her team had developed a regular occurring experience when they were reaching out to these nonprofits who didn't believe it, thought it was too good to be true. And we fell into that same camp. Our CEO, Amy Luttrell, she actually deleted the first email because again, it seemed too good to be true. And just like Metro United Way, there was a follow-up email that said, I think you want to pay attention to this. And so I remember her breaking from a meeting, you know, explaining that, you know, she was going to take this call, wasn't sure what it was about. It seemed a little fishy. And then even after she had the call, thought, you know, I'm not sure if this is real, but if it is, you know, Christmas is going to come a little bit earlier than we were anticipating. And so it turned out obviously to be real, a $10 million gift that was unsolicited and came out of the blue. And it came after, as David said, Mackenzie Scott and her team had done a great deal of research on their own about who we are and what we do. And I agree with him. I think, you know, obviously there probably won't be a lot of $10 million gifts like that to come on a regular basis, but I do believe the idea and sort of the approach that she took to making that investment, where she did the due diligence, did our homework, got really familiar with who we are, what we do, who our leadership team is, what our results have been over the last 3 years, and said, here's some money, do with it as you will. I trust you guys are smart enough, are committed enough, are focused enough, are strategic enough to make good on this investment. And, you know, for us, part of what we've been building a strategy around for our fundraising efforts, Cynthia, is really one that is about identifying investors in our mission. You know, we want people who are ready to partner with us to kind of take a bigger, bolder vision throughout the state, even here in Louisville. And that's sort of the model that she's helped us build on. This idea that the work that we're doing is valuable, it's already producing results. We can show you that year after year after year. We can show you the statistics, the numbers. We can show you the lives that have been changed. And with greater investments come greater opportunities for us to expand on that work. And so she gave us really a nod of approval, and one that I think came with tremendous visibility and awareness, both locally and nationally, that I think was a great nod to the work our staff has been doing over the last few years. So it was exciting, but and I think you'll start to see more trends of people investing in work that they know has a return that they can be pretty clear about.
So David, I like that you use kind of disruption, and DeVone, you're talking about trends. So let's talk a little bit about that in terms of future orientation and what is coming in terms of trends and disruptions. Trace, I'm going to start with you, and let's talk about the future of fundraising. What do you see? What's your crystal ball telling you?
Well, I think the future of fundraising, you're going to probably see more. We're going to be trying to partner with other organizations and work together, try to figure out, like say, there were thousands of referrals from other organizations. I want to work together with them on resources or even fundraising activities. So I think there's going to be a lot more collaboration together. I believe that you're going to see a lot more from employer partners. I know that we're seeing a lot dealing with workforce development and trying to help service members transition in the workforce or get jobs. So we're seeing a little bit more partnership there. I think that's something that a lot of people are going to see more of is maybe some relationships with corporate partners. You know, we just we keep trying to move forward and trying to grow our base and make sure that more people know who we are and what we're doing. So that's probably a big part of it is social media as well. It's going to be a much larger push on social media to actually get the word out.
Okay. So DeVone, let's get your crystal ball predictions?
I think Trace is right. I think moving forward, there's going to be a great need, Cynthia, for nonprofits to find ways to collaborate. Resources only stretch so far, and I know a lot of my colleagues on this call are going to hate to hear me say this. Maybe they won't, but it is my belief, Cynthia, that there is no need for another nonprofit to be created in the state of Kentucky. We've got enough. What we really need are ways to support the ones that exist, to help them strengthen the work that they do, so that we can get to the results that we're all hoping for. And so the idea is not to stretch more resources over more nonprofit organizations. The idea is about identifying, being really strategic about identifying where the pain is, about identifying where the need is, and focusing collaborative efforts on addressing those problems, and then soliciting resources to support those collaborative efforts, instead of having 1,000,001 nonprofits attempting to do the same thing, attempting to knock on the same doors and asking for the same money. We've got to get really strategic about how we do this work, and not be about this notion of building a nonprofit kingdom, and be more focused on building results that improve the communities that we serve. And so I think the path moving forward is one about, again, collaboration. And it's also one about, again, raising awareness, visibility, and credibility for the work that we do. And not just about raising funds, but raising friends who are aware of the work that we do, and can support the work that we do, and can be ambassadors for the work that we do. Maybe not always writing a check, but finding ways to also be supportive of it in other non-financial committed ways.
So David, I'm gonna get your predictions, and then we've got questions rolling into the chat. So I'm gonna try and get to some of those.
So I'll go off of something DeVone said, this idea of asking for the same money, right? That is shifting. I think of some of our partners like Humana and Brown-Forman, who have come to us and we've gone to them and said, are there other categories of dollars beyond philanthropic dollars, marketing dollars, sponsorship dollars, innovation dollars, that we can use to actually achieve our shared goals for the community together? How do we contribute to your business bottom line? How do you contribute to impact in the community? How do those overlap together? I think that's a trend. I think the other big trend that I'm going to focus in on, and I see this coming up more and more in conversations with our foundation partner, James Graham Brown Foundation, Jewish Heritage Fund for Excellence, Geens Foundation, is how are we going even further into the equity commitment? How are we looking at racial justice? How are we looking at gender and equity? How are we looking at immigration issues? Refugee populations in our community. That was there before, right? As I mentioned, when we did our new strategic plan 3 or 4 years ago, equity was one of the top priorities. But with COVID highlighting all of the places where we see those disparities around race and gender, immigration status, I think all of our donors, our partners, just our neighbors in general are asking themselves, how are we going to do better by equity in our community? And I think that's going to be true for nonprofits moving forward.
So we have a lot of crystal ball action going on in the chat in regard to events, particularly as it relates to like fundraising events. And are we predicting any, do we feel like, oh, there's so much virtual event burnout, or nope, we're going to double down on that until 2025? Or what is your all sense of virtual events and this next year, 18 months?
I'll share something around something that we did virtually this year as opposed to in person like we've done in previous years, which was around Giving Tuesday. So about 2 years ago, again, as part of these strategic shifts to raise more revenue outside of our workplace campaigns, we said we're going to go big on Giving Tuesday. In previous years, we raised maybe $5,000, $10,000 among all of our 7 counties. And then since making that shift, we've raised more than $100,000 every year. And that's actually grown to about $150,000 this year. And we had to do it virtually. I'll highlight something that I said in the chat. Much of that success had to do with us leaning into what good fundraising is, no matter virtual or in person, right? Having really compelling stories, making sure donors know exactly what their dollars are going toward, really leveraging volunteers to help us make asks, having matching dollars or catalytic dollars to get people excited about their impact being doubled or tripled when they give. And so I just hope that folks, and I know we have so many talented fundraisers on the call today, they understand what the basics are in terms of good fundraising. And as you shift to virtual, just make sure you're infusing all of those things into that, because that way, regardless of whether folks are thrilled about another Zoom or not, you're going to be able to leverage those best practices to still have a good outcome in terms of your efforts.
Anybody else, any of our other panelists has some good insight? Do you think there's burnout? How do we combat that? Are you all doubling down? Are you going to continue to do virtual, and for how long?
I agree with David. I think the idea for fundraising is always about kind of going to where the donors are and connecting with the donors in ways that resonate with them. And so, you know, as we continue to deal with COVID and these social distancing protocols, my belief is that there's going to be a need for at least the next 18 months to still figure out how do you connect with people virtually. But that, you know, that doesn't have to change sort of the essence of what fundraising is about. As David said, it's about having a compelling story. It's about being able to show and prove the results that you've kind of committed yourself to, and position yourself sort of as a worthy organization. And that won't ever change, be it in person or be it virtual. And so, you know, that part I think will always remain true. But I do believe even beyond COVID, you know, just like we're starting to see businesses make decisions now about what the workspace is going to look like moving forward. You know, there are going to be fewer offices, fewer people working in offices. There are going to be more people operating virtually, just because we've recognized that this is possible now. And so I don't think the virtual ask or the virtual fundraising campaigns disappear. Quite frankly, I think they will only increase over time, because we've recognized this as a viable way of communicating. I think in the future, we're going to have to be really multifaceted in the way that we take these fundraising approaches and build that into upcoming strategies that require us to be nimble and be in person and be virtual and do all of that in order to get what we've been accustomed to getting in the past.
So this next question kind of relates to the connect with donors where they are, but shifts away from virtual, and is a question about direct mail. And maybe is that, you know, are we seeing any more focus put onto direct mail campaigns?
Well, I can tell you, we did a end of year mailer, and it had really good results. But I think a lot of that was because of all the activity and the events and everything we were doing to push that message out, to try to clarify who we are, what we do, and why are we unique to other organizations. We really had a lot of supporters that were like, hey, yeah, we want to help you. We want to get through this period together. Talking about those events, we're probably going to be doing both virtual and when we can do live, and then actually use the technology to merge it together. And those chapters that I talked about that would be scattered out across the US, they can do it simultaneous with me virtually. But yeah, mailers, it's still working for us.
Same here, Trace. Mailers still work for us too. You know, I won't pretend that it's the largest fundraising producer for us, but it is a tool that's reliable. It allows you to continue to connect with people. And I just recommend mailers because it creates another touch point for people to you know, stay aware of who you are, what you're doing, even if they don't respond to it. It's relatively inexpensive, and it again keeps you in front of the people who need to know what's happening in your world.
So let's talk about donors and philanthropy, charitable giving in our community. GLP data tells us that charitable giving in our community is somewhere in the neighborhood of 3% of annual income, and our peer cities is more like 5%. So is that a problem? Is that something we need to work on? Has anybody got any ideas on how we could work on that? David, looks like you got some wisdom to share with us.
I mean, first, I will say, I don't want us to sell ourselves short, right? So I'm coming from outside of Louisville, and I can tell you that I've experienced a culture of philanthropy here among individual donors and corporate donors that I didn't see back in San Diego. And I think we should really honor that. Is there room for improvement? Absolutely, just as there is everywhere. And I'll just add one thing that I think is important. We do underestimate how much we can save as a society when we invest in solutions on the front end versus the back end. So I talked earlier about our disconnected youth numbers, right? And how it was 17,000 youth pre-COVID. It's closer to 32,000 now. There was an estimate in that Courier Journal article that talked about our disconnected youth, about how much we would end up spending as a society if we did not address the disconnected youth challenge in terms of lost tax revenue, social services, et cetera. And it was estimated, I think, at like $15 billion. And so I think for a lot of folks in any community, right, we think about what we're maybe wanting to avoid in terms of upfront spending, but we're underestimating how much we're actually having to spend later on. And so I think just raising some of the awareness, which actually GLP does a great job of doing that, around, hey, could we invest $5 now and save ourselves $100 later? That could add to folks giving even more generously than they already do.
We've got like another minute left. Anybody else want to comment on that? Otherwise, I'm going to close us out with a final word or two.
I thought David nailed it.
So, one of the things that we take very seriously at the Leadership Louisville Center is we're so thoughtful about our partners and how we use our platform and our stage. So I want to particularly thank our guest speakers and commend them for the admirable work that they do. We are such fans of all of you all and are so pleased to be able to shine a light on such star quality in our community. So thank you all for joining us and for being with you. And in that same vein of us being thoughtful about who our partners are, I want to thank Jim Allen and all the folks at Baird for being our constant friend and supporter and collaborator on how we get this good information out into our communities so that we can connect the dots and act collectively. So I want to thank them for that. I want to invite you to hang out with us again. For those of you that are nonprofits or you're on the board of a nonprofit or you love a nonprofit, we'd love to talk to you about how you can have an Ignite team, group of young professionals who are going to roll up their sleeves and get some stuff done for you, or an Encore team, some seasoned wisdom who can help guide you through some good strategic decisions. We would love to be able to connect with you on that. So thanks to all of you, to our Leadership Louisville team for producing another Zoom event. Until we are able to gather again, thanks for everything you do for the community.
Thanks, guys.
Thank
Great.
you.